Morning, RJ. How you doing this morning?
I am doing very well, my friend. How about you?
Can't complain. I finally feel like today we're warming up and we're going to be back up into the 70s, so we'll have weather similar to yours. So
Yeah, I don't know that there's a lot of options to go buy winter coats in Texas, but
right.
I guess there has to be now.
It's still a little cold. I mean, I woke up this morning and it's still 63 in the house, so I always wear a jacket in the morning. So it's still a little chilly, but we'll be up in the mid 70s today, so it's all good. Well,
Nice.
today's a great topic. I mean, we're talking about discoverability and how the world is upended on its head for all of us in marketing. And I want you to introduce the topic and tell us what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, this is such a dynamic, and fast changing world we're in. And one of the areas where that is where it's showing up, most impactfully is in discoverability. How are, your customers or consumers finding you as a business, finding your products? I mean, that's changed like 180 degrees from where it was just a few years ago. And that's all based on the adoption of AI. People's search behavior has changed. The way they're finding information has changed. Everybody is using AI because it's easy and it's simple and it's got access to, an immense amount of data. But what does that mean to a business from a discoverability perspective? And we're seeing that. And today we're going to talk about really sort of 4 key pieces of that. And it can be confusing because there's all these 3-letter acronyms that are out there. But today we're gonna talk about sort of the impact of SEO, how SEO has changed. It hasn't necessarily gone away. It isn't. You don't need to think about it, but you need to think about it a bit differently. AEO, GEO, and MCP. We're going to break up all those. We're going to talk about all those things. But why is that important? It's because today, and this stat probably is actually even more significant than one I have right now because things are changing so fast, is that 65% of all searches today, like Google searches, the traditional SEO thing, result in 0 clicks. What does that mean? That means people aren't clicking through to go to your site. They're finding the answer elsewhere outside of your site. And, so traffic has changed, 2/3 of it's dried up. It's gone away. My site traffic is down. What do I do? That's one of the things we're going to talk about. And another stat, this one's from McKinsey, is that 72% of product discoverability now begins off of, a company's website. That information it's going elsewhere. It's going out into AI platforms, and people are finding that answer there. So how do you recognize that and position your business to take advantage of it, really, right? That's what's happening. How do you position yourself to improve what's happening, and then sort of the discoverability of yourself, your company, and your products, even though all these behaviors change. So I think probably, Ron, I know you have thought long and hard about this, and you even have sort of maybe an example from your world as to how these things sort of line up and look like. Maybe we start with that as a high level. I think that would be super, that visual piece would be helpful.
Yeah. And again, talking about my world, I mean, just in the last 6 to 9 months, over 75% of our traditional SEO leads that Clarity's benefited from the last 14 years that I've been here have dried up completely. Now, the leads haven't necessarily dried up. They've moved and they've shifted. And so if you're not aware of the shift and you're still relying on traditional SEO, you're hurting. And that's where most of my clients are, because all of my clients have done the traditional SEO. For the last 20 years, they've enjoyed great leads. They've invested a lot in SEO. SEO was that gift that keeps on giving, right? And now that's completely changed. And what's changed is the way the search engines are now classifying data and the way they're using the data that they brought in from traditional SEO. They're breaking it into different things. And the most important one that we need to understand is the difference between informational data and intent data.
Yeah.
And so basically what's happened is AI and the search engines are like, oh, well, if people are just looking for answers, just information, we can serve that up. Hey, GPT, tell me where the best tacos are here in Austin. And GPT is going to go out, look at them and go, what kind of, do you want traditional tacos like Taco Bell, or do you want real authentic tacos, right? And it's going to come back, and I can interface with GPT and it can go out and find me more information than a traditional search can very quickly and give me ideas that I wouldn't think about, right? And that's what's happening. There's an example. Now, one of the things I did was to really make this visual for you guys, and I'm going to bring it up here, and sorry, RJ, I'm going to cover your face up here so we can all see this. I'm going to bring this graphic and show you what this looks like. So I went in and put this graphic together. And at the top of the graphic, you can see I went in and I typed in, what is HIPAA e-commerce? Clarity does a lot of HIPAA e-commerce. It's a big part of what we do in our traditional platform and where we market. So you can see the red dot across the screen. Right now, I'm going to show you just what's above the fold. There are no SEO results above the fold. So the traditional stuff that we've been doing for the last 20 years, nothing shows up here anymore, right? Because AI at the top now is trying to answer this question. And if somebody's just asking a question for a research paper, or if somebody's just going, I need some more information about this, and they type in what is HIPAA e-commerce, and AI answers the question really well and writes out a nice response there, they're never going to click on anything. And that's why the clicks are drying up. Now, on the right-hand side, these are, and this top part is GEO, generative answer optimization, right? So this is where AI has taken information and AI is trying to generate the answer to what the search is. So GEO now is king. GEO is at the top of the page, GEO is above the fold. So everything you're seeing in these two columns is GEO. Fortunately, Clarity happened, one of our pages happens to show up on the right-hand side when it says, hey, here's some other things that we think are going to answer this really well. Now that I've generated the answer and really understand what we're talking about, here are the things that I think are most relevant. And so those are GEO recommendations above the fold. Fortunately, we happen to show up, and so we might still get a few clicks. So this is GEO. Let me scroll down below the fold now and move this up. Okay, so now in the green, you can see right below the GEO is the first #1 result for SEO, right? And now right below that, which we've seen for the last 2 or 3 years, is that people also ask section. Now, what that really shows up is if somebody does a query, up at the top, I typed in, what is something? Now that's a question. It's very easy to answer a question with an answer. So if they think they found that answer and somebody has answered that in an FAQ snippet, that's what the AEO, the answer engine optimization. So the orange section here is AEO. So AEO has been around for about the last 2 or 3 years, and it's been in usually between positions 1 and 3. And so if people are asking a question, Google in the search engine is like, hey, instead of making them go click on a website and go hunt and peck and read through the whole page to try to find the answer, we've got these people who have actually gone into the header in an FAQ snippet and answered this question directly, and we think we can provide their answer faster. And that's what our job's to do. So now AEO has also potentially negatively impacted us because people are answering the questions in the snippets, and that's only after position #1. And then you can see all the way down there in position #5 in yellow, there's Clarity again. That is our #5 position, which used to be right in the middle of page 1, which used to generate some decent traffic, has now below the fold and is all the way down below the GEO and all the way down below the AEO. So this is now what our results are looking like. So you can see where traditionally for the last 14 years in this example, Clarity would have been right there above the fold, right? We would have had probably about the top, we would have been able to fit about the top 6 answers above the fold. We would have been about 2/3 the way down the page, only about 4 or 5 inches down the page, right there in position 5. We would have been there, and we're not even on the first page anymore. And that's what's dried everything up. #1, the informational content is now being served up by GEO up top. The rest of the information answering the questions is served up by AEO. And so now only those who have additional intent are going to be clicking through. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So SEO is not dead. SEO is still very much alive, but now SEO is strictly about intent. And even if you look at SEMrush and some of the other tools, they've even split it out and shown you that. So the first one let's cover real quick is we'll talk about SEO. We still have to do traditional SEO, but as you know now, all of that informational SEO content that we've been writing for the last 20 years doesn't do a lot. It still provides information, but unless the AI, the search bots think that we serve up, like in that picture that I showed you up in that top right, Clarity happened to show up. Unless it thinks we answered it really well, it's not going to show up at all. It's going to be way off the page. So now what we need to do is we need to do 2 things with all of our SEO content. We still need to write the content, but now we have to completely change the content. And the word you're going to hear a whole bunch is about structured content. So you could literally go out and do GPT and say, hey, can you show me the best guide to tell me how to rewrite my content for structured content for AEO and GEO? It'll come back and give you 2 or 3 websites. There's some really, really good guides that come back and tell you exactly how to rewrite your content. You have to have authors, and date and timestamps, and citings, and it's just a little bit of change. So what Clarity's doing now, instead of writing new SEO content, we're literally going back to our existing SEO content that served us well over the past years. We're rewriting it in a better structured format. We're rewriting our FAQs. We're then converting our HTML FAQs on page to FAQ snippets. We're inserting that into the header to be considered for AEO, which is exactly what RJ is going to talk about next. And so we're completely restructuring our SEO content for intent, right? People that are looking for a help guide, people that are looking for instructions to walk them through, people that are looking for research, people that are looking to buy. Those are intent markers. And that's what we have to rewrite our content to show up for, so that we can show up in these other areas. So RJ, take us on to AEO.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Ron, you did a really good job of setting this up. And to your point, I mean, the reason why people have adopted AI so readily is that it does provide pretty good answers very quickly and comprehensively, right? So that answer engine piece, to your point, right, it is really what people, vast majority of consumers use AI for. Yeah. And so, thinking about how to take advantage of that as a business is critically important. How does your answer become the answer for whether it's ChatGPT or Perplexity or Gemini or any of these large, sort of AI tools that are out there? And really, thinking about what you just said, it's like, okay, you've got to have all of those. It's more about putting your data out there, structuring in that sort of like either how to or question and answer sort of thing, so that when AI goes out, the AI bots, ChatGPT bots, or the Madeira bot for Google Gemini, whatever it is, goes out and sort of still crawls your site. It is now grabbing those answers because it wants to give an answer, because it wants, that's the value of AI. That's how they're getting adoption. That's how, those companies are being measured by numbers of users. And the way that works is that they're providing quick and fast answers to people. So, when we think about that, and, we're talking to our clients, to your point, it's like looking at, sort of that data structure, focusing on the content that you have put out there. Now, it doesn't mean that you just become like a Q&A website, but you need to be really intentional about having that information. Or you still want to have your brand, you still want to have your imagery, that sort of stuff, but you really need to be a lot more intentional on your FAQs, your how-tos, having your content set up that way. Because right now, like most of like this, one of the stats we've seen recently is that Gartner's talking about how, 53% of buyers use AI in their research workflow right now. They're doing that. So you've got to get your information out in front of your buyers, doing that sort of thing. And so like what we're talking about with like our clients is like, hey, take a look and go into your customer service logs or whatever it is, and look at what are the top questions your customers are asking you. Take that and create information around that. Get that on your website. Get your Q&As on there. That's what AI is going to really like, because now AI can provide value to whoever is doing their searches inside of AI, and your answers are showing up in that AEO section that you just sort of highlighted, Ron, on that visual, which was super helpful, I think, when you start thinking about that. So that's a really critical piece, because you want to be, in that sort of presentation from AI to a prospect when they're asking a question that's relevant to a product that you offer. So that's sort of AEO. And that leads into, our next topic, which is, GEO, which is the generative engine optimization. So I'll flip that one over to you.
Yeah, so the generative is a fun one, right? And I just showed you the one example where I said, what is hip e-commerce? And it typed up a really nice response up above. That's also the one that does product recommendations and product comparisons aside from what we call those generated summaries. I showed you one of a generated summary example, but if I went in and said best deal on Sony Bravia for a TV, right, the last one I bought, it'll come up and show me all the deals and shows all those products and the prices, right? That's also GEO. Now, the way GEO does that, it basically knows that a complete, well-taxonomied, and we'll talk about that in a second, because a lot of my clients and RJ's clients, he and I have both been in the e-commerce space forever. I mean, that's really our core wheelhouse and has been for years, even though now we're moving into AI and we're doing a lot of other things. We have to go back to our e-commerce clients right now, and we have to redo some of their listings. One of the things that my clients, a lot of them do is, well, we do a lot of B2B. And so a lot of people just come to us to buy because they get a better deal or they buy in bulk. And so they don't have and haven't invested a lot of money in great product descriptions. They haven't invested and thought about how SEO is affected by the product images. They may not have good product images, right? They've got one that Bob in IT snapped with his phone and slapped up there, so they at least have a picture of our product with our label. They don't have good images. They don't have good descriptions. And worst, they don't have good taxonomy. Now, why is that important to GEO? Because GEO takes actually all of those things into consideration when you go in and say, where should I buy my Sony Bravia? It takes all those things into consideration as confidence markers to rate me well as a trusted source to show where to buy from, right? So I'm actually helping right now with GEO with my clients in e-commerce to go back and rewrite their product descriptions, to go back and have better images, and update their images, to name the image files better, to have their ARIA labels. I mean, there's so many little markers that they can do to help improve. Matter of fact, Baymard, I thought it was Baynard, Baymard study said that complete product data boosts conversions 20 to 35%. So you have a 35% better chance of converting if you have complete data. And it also completely improves our ability to even be seen and recommended by GEO if we don't have that complete data. So GEO, again, is really important. You have to have structured data, and that's not just e-commerce, that's everything. So take a blog post. What is structured data in blog post? Well, do we have a date? Do we have an author? Do we have proper citings? Do we have any images or infographics? There's structured data. Do we have the proper labels? I mentioned the word taxonomy a minute ago. We're going back and redoing the taxonomy of the mega menu for our e-commerce sites, because a lot of times our clients are in biomedical, right? And so they've got weird stuff like DNA markers, and they've got stuff like that, that's weird names, where they have to go back and rethink this. What are people searching when they're looking for this? Are people actually going out and going, I'm looking for DNA markers? No, that's how I categorize out my stuff, is by DNA marker. Okay, well, that's more of a filter once they get to my site looking for what are they looking for? Oh, well, they're looking for different DNA strands. Okay, well, then do I have DNA strands in my mega menu? Did I classify that at the top level? So when the AI bots come and crawl my site, they can see that I've got all my DNA strands. Within my DNA strands, I've got the different, and again, I'm not medical space, so I don't know all the taxonomy, but it even looks at that taxonomy and uses the taxonomy of your menu structure in whether to recommend these things. So make sure to have your keywords. We actually have one of the fields in our e-commerce platform called SEO aliases. And so that could be competitive part numbers. It could be, I've got in the SEO keywords, I've got, or in the aliases, I've got TV, television, flat screen, monitor. I've got all the different names so that those can all be considered within that SEO content. So when somebody comes and searches for that item and they call it a TV, where I might call it a flat screen, or I might call it, a monitor, I'm being considered because that information's there. So GEO is really about structured data. That's what you need to research. That's what you're going to have to go back and rewrite and just optimize, just kind of tweak and optimize all of your data to be structured data, whether that's product data, blog data, or data that used to be truly informational now needs to become intent driven. Why do I have this blog post? Because this is the exact instructions for people to come learn how to improve their Windows 11 performance. Okay, then turn it into intent, turn it into a guide, say the definitive guide to improve your Windows 11 performance, and change that blog post so now it becomes an intent driven click through. Now, that brings us to the overarching one that kind of envelopes all of them, right? The MCP. So why don't you, I don't even think people know what it, because MCP used to be development, right? We used to, when we were looking at ASP and classic ASP and coding, we used to talk about MCP. So MCP to developers is a completely different thing now it is to marketers. So talk about MCP and what it means to us.
Yeah, and all this, like I say, can be certainly confusing, and
Yeah.
these things evolve. It seems like almost weekly, but this one's been around for a little while, and I think it's becoming this. It's kind of become the standard, and it's modal context protocol. And what does that mean? It's primarily, I think it's focused on product data. But it is the structure. Basically, what you want to make sure is that the data that you have, and like I say, I know we've talked a lot about AEO and answers and GEO and that sort of presenting information. MCP is really around accuracy and product information, and making that structured in a way that the AI engines can easily consume, and it can surface something that's accurate. So there's two things. It's going to be consumption and accuracy are the two things around MCP. And that's the reason why that sort of standard was rolled out, so that all these things, it's kind of like going back to the, VHS and beta, like you have these different structures. Well, eventually there has to be sort of a standardized structure that everybody uses so you can develop on top of that. Well, MCP is sort of that, from the way the data is structured to be consumed by AI platforms. And so, what it does is it enables these large language models to access, correct information, the different data sources, and to do so reliably. And so why is that important? Well, it means that, these AI engines know what content to pull, which, what content is relevant. You can use it, to your point of what we've talked about before, with things like, product comparisons or recommendations, or even, if you're using AI to do deep research, in those areas, AI is really going to sort of prioritize, reliable information. I mean, we all know that AI has a tendency to hallucinate. Rob, you and I had an interesting conversation on that just last week, I think, with all the work that you've been doing on AI hallucinations. And you're telling AI to do something, it says, okay, I hear you, I'm going to do it. And it still comes back and makes the same mistakes, right? Those are hallucinations. Well, so how you want to make sure that you're minimizing that, or you're enabling AI to minimize that, so that, and it's going to prioritize, sort of reliable information. And if your product information is set up in an MCP format, it's going to take that as being more reliable information. And the other thing that does is it's really the gateway to agentic AI, meaning having AI agents do something. So, because then you really need reliable information. So if you're talking about your product price or your product inventory availability, like if it's going to generate an answer like, hey, I need this valve that handles this size pressure and this size thing, right? It wants to come back with a recommendation of someone that has that product and it's in stock. So it can only do that if your product information is structured using MCP, and you've got that information coming, flowing through your backend ERP or whatever, your PIM or wherever the information comes from. It's a way that sort of connects all those dots and enables that to happen. And so it's really just that sort of structure. But, we've seen, like, from some of the, statistical components of that, is that, AI with correct sort of MCP and, context reduces hallucinations by 70 to 90%. That's a study that came out of Stanford. So you want to, trust me, these AI companies understand that hallucinations are not their friend. They want to provide accurate information. So if you're helping them do so by the way that you're structuring your data and the way that your systems are integrated to present that data, your information is going to be prioritized. And so, tools that these large language models that integrate and go to your site and are able to search because you're doing MCP, that sort of improves reliability by, 200 or 300%. That's from Anthropic itself. So that's the reason why MCP is so important. And when you're thinking about how you're getting your product data onto your website, you need to do so and set up your site to handle it in a way that does that, to facilitate that piece. So, and that's evolving and changing all the time. So I think that's a critical underlying component of this.
Yeah, and I'll give a quick example, because everything we've talked about, two things. Number one, we didn't spend a ton of money on SEO over the last 25 years. It was time. It was very expensive in time, right? We wrote a lot of content. We optimized a lot of content. This new change doesn't necessarily require a lot of money. It's not like we're all switching to paid ads, right? We don't have to do that. But the time that we invested in SEO now needs to be invested in structured content and optimizing our content. So I'm going to give just a real quick example for RJ's MCP right here. So theoretically, when I go to a website and I got a projector in my movie room and the bulb goes out and I'm looking for a replacement bulb, right? Now I'm going to just go ask AI, where do I get a replacement bulb? And it might give me an answer, right? But how does it know that it's got an accurate answer? It's going to go out and look at all these things for sale. Now, if I had an e-commerce site, a Clarity e-commerce site, and I had my bulb there, and down at the bottom, I put the word replaces : and then I put 72 other part numbers. Well, when it goes through and crawls that site, because it sees the word replaces off on its own and this and that and the other, it may not realize that all of those are competitive and replacement part numbers, right? Because that content isn't very structured. It is on the page. And if I get to that page and if I find that bulb and I'm like, well, which one does this replace? And I go down to the bottom and I see that it replaces the bulb that I have in my hand, that works for somebody that's there. But for AI to look at that page and know that the word replaces has all these replacement part numbers isn't really good. However, if I just change the word replaces : replacement part numbers for, GE bulb number, blah, 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 : and then I have those. Now, when it goes through and it sees that content, it says, oh, wow, here is a whole list of replacement part numbers for this bulb. And that's what the search was that they typed in. That is very structured content. And the thing that RJ was talking about is the accuracy. One of the things MCP says, and they say here, is AI wants to choose the right answer the right time, right? And so the only way we do that is if we have structured content. So we have to describe very concisely to the AI what this data is. And so our titling, our taxonomy, our categorization, our H1s, our H2s, our H3s have now just become 5 times more important than they were before. And that's really mostly what we're talking about in this structured content. Right?
And one thing, it makes me think of something, Ron. I was reading an article by one of the analysts that I follow that's e-commerce centric on one of the large firms, and she was talking about how it was just a holiday season not that long ago, and she wanted to see, so she went into a variety of different AIs and put in looking for a specific type of dress, right, color, whatever it was. And what was interesting was she consistently was getting results from smaller companies, but those companies had invested to structure their data properly to get it to be readable and accurate from AI. And now she was frustrated in a way that she kept seeing the same brands and she wanted a variety of brands to choose from. But it just goes to show, if you're doing this properly, you can punch way above your weight class in how you're taking advantage of this change in technology and how you need to adapt to it.
Yeah. So in closing, there's just one little thing that I saw that I kind of liked. So let's talk about it. SEO now tells Google who you are. GEO tells the AI engines what you sell. AEO tells AI assistants to choose you. And then MCP tells AI how to understand it all. Right? So anyway, I know that this was, we probably could have spent 3 hours on today's topic. It's a lot. We covered a lot. So I'm hoping that the visual example helps. Really appreciate you, RJ. Always fun to do these. If you guys have a comment, please leave a comment below. Love you to subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions about this, or if you're looking for a consultant to talk and help you through your e-commerce and restructuring your data, reach out to RJ, reach out to me, visit our websites, and come see us. And we hope to see you in the next webinar. Bye for now.
Bye.